It was supposed to be just coffee. A break. A quiet afternoon in the middle of nowhere. Officer Ryan Hale leaned against his cruiser, sipping from a foam cup as snow drifted lazily across the cracked sidewalk of downtown Summit Ridge. The town had no more than 2 stoplights and 1 reliable diner, and this far out in Wyoming, even bad news took its time getting here. He had just decided to head back to the station when he saw it. Across the street, beneath a crooked "Cash for Gold" sign, stood a man hunched over like a question mark, face obscured by a hood, arms tatted up with angry ink. At his feet, sprawled on a ragged wool blanket, was a German shepherd, big, scarred, unmoving. A piece of cardboard leaned against the man's boots. Purebred shepherd. $200. No papers, no questions. Ryan blinked. The dog didn't lift its head. It didn't flinch. It just lay there like a shadow that had forgotten how to be anything else. He crossed the street without a word. "You selling him?" Ryan asked, eyeing both man and animal. The guy grinned crookedly, revealing a chipped tooth and the kind of smile born from too many lies told too fast. "Yup. Found him near the freight yard couple nights back. Thought someone might want to give him a shot. You interested?" Ryan didn't answer. He crouched, slowly, until he was eye level with the dog. The shepherd didn't react. Not even a blink. Just stared through him with eyes that were both empty and ancient. And then he saw it. A jagged scar just below the left ear, half hidden beneath matted fur. The kind of scar you don't get from street fights, the kind left by an explosion. Ryan's breath caught. His hand trembled, barely visible, but it was there. Shadow had a scar like that. 3 years ago, Shadow had vanished during a drug raid turned hellfire. The warehouse went up before Ryan could reach the back door. They'd never found a body. Just heat and debris. "What's his name?" Ryan asked. "Didn't come with one." The man shrugged. "I been calling him Beast." "Beast," Ryan repeated under his breath. "Right." He didn't know why he reached for his wallet. Maybe it was the scar. Maybe it was the look in the dog's eye, something broken but not entirely gone. Maybe it was guilt. $200, right?" Ryan said. The guy snatched the bills like he thought Ryan would change his mind. "No refunds," he added, already backing down the sidewalk. Ryan looked at the dog again. "Let's go." He gave a light tug on the rope leash. The dog rose, stiffly, like its joints were remembering how to move. It didn't look back at the man. It didn't hesitate. It just followed Ryan to the cruiser and climbed into the back seat like it had done it 100 times before. But Ryan knew that was impossible. Back at his cabin, tucked near the tree line west of town, the dog stepped over the threshold like it was entering neutral ground. Not a home, not a cage, just space. Ryan didn't speak for a long time. He let the dog circle, let it sniff the couch, the fireplace, the old photos on the mantel. Then it froze. Right beneath the mantel sat a glass case. Inside it, folded neatly, were a K9 service vest, a collar with the tag Shadow, and a small metal badge etched with the unit code, K9-47B. The shepherd stared at the display. Ryan stepped beside him. "Do you remember?" he asked softly. No response. Not a twitch. He reached beneath the fur at the dog's neck, fingers brushing over thick, coarse hair until they found it-raised skin. A scar. And beneath it, barely visible under the hair, ink. K9-47B. Ryan staggered back a half step. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But it was. Shadow. The dog turned then, not fast, not dramatic, just slowly. And for a moment their eyes met. And for that moment Ryan could swear something flickered in that gaze, like the flame hadn't gone out, only dimmed. He crouched again, voice tight. "I thought you were gone." Still nothing. And yet. That night, as the wind picked up and the trees groaned under fresh snowfall, headlights flared across the front windows. Ryan moved to the door, hand near his sidearm. A black SUV idled outside. Engine running. Tinted windows. A man stepped out. Heavyset, bald, leather vest over camo. He didn't knock. He pounded. Ryan opened the door just enough to be heard. "You looking for someone?" The man's eyes swept past him into the house. "I think you've got something that belongs to me." Ryan didn't move. "I bought a dog." "He's mine. That dog ain't just a dog," the man said. "He's property. You got 24 hours to return him. Or next time, I bring backup." Ryan's jaw clenched. "You don't scare easy." The man smirked. Ryan's voice was low, cold. "Try me." The man left without another word. Shadow didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't even lift his head. But something had changed in Ryan. That dog wasn't just a rescue, it was a second chance. And whatever the hell this was, it wasn't over. Not even close. The drive up to Ryan's cabin was slow, not because of the snow, but because of the weight sitting silently in the back seat. The shepherd hadn't made a sound. No panting, no shifting, not even a whimper. Just sat there, eyes fixed on the passing trees like he was scanning terrain from a past life. The cabin came into view, a weather-worn single-story structure nestled among pines and cottonwoods, miles from the nearest neighbor. Ryan pulled into the gravel driveway and cut the engine. The shepherd didn't move. He opened the back door. "You coming?" A pause. Then the dog stepped out, one paw at a time, each movement calculated like he was walking into unfamiliar territory. Ryan opened the front door and held it with his shoulder. The shepherd entered, not hesitantly, but not with comfort either. More like reconnaissance. He moved with a soldier's gait, slow, purposeful, checking corners without realizing why. Inside, the air held the smell of ash and cedar. The fireplace sat cold but ready. The couch was worn, the kitchen neat, and every photo on the wall told a story of before. Ryan tossed his keys in the tray by the door and watched the dog do his silent patrol, sniff the rug, the couch leg, the baseboard heater. Then he stopped, dead center of the room, facing the mantel. Ryan turned his head. On the shelf sat the folded service vest, the K9 badge, and the old black collar with the faded brass tag that read, "Shadow." The shepherd stood motionless, eyes locked on the display. No reaction, no tail wag. But he didn't look away. Ryan's throat tightened. He crouched, hand slow, fingers reaching under the shepherd's neck fur. It was thick and unkempt, coarse from exposure. But beneath it, he found the skin. Scar tissue, and deeper in, raised ink. He shifted the fur aside. K9-47B, it was real. The ink was faded, but it was there. Military blue-gray, tattooed like all official units. Ryan let out a slow breath and sat back on his heels. "Jesus," he whispered. "Shadow." The shepherd looked at him. Just looked. Not recognition, not confusion. Just a stare that said nothing and everything at once. Ryan rose and walked to a drawer, pulled out the old scanner unit standard issue from his K9 handler days. He powered it on and swept the device over the dog's neck and shoulder. No beep, no signal. He tried again. Lower this time. Still nothing. "Either the chip's been wiped," he muttered, "or it's gone." The dog lay down, head resting between his front paws. The same pose Shadow used to take in the patrol truck, especially when Ryan stopped for gas or coffee. But this version didn't sigh or blink slowly. He just shut down, like a machine powering off. Ryan filled a bowl with warm water and set it beside the dog. Then another with leftover rotisserie chicken. No tail wag, no excited sniffs. The dog walked over and ate mechanical, efficient, like he needed the fuel, not the flavor. Outside, the snow began to fall again, thick, slow flakes coating the steps and trees in white silence. Ryan sat at the table watching the dog sleep near the fireplace. The logs inside were unlit, but the embers in his memory were flaring. He couldn't sit still. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through old contact logs until he found her. Elise Monroe. They hadn't spoken in over a year. The last time was at the funeral of another fallen handler. She'd gone silent since, switched clinics, focused on neurological work with trauma dogs. She'd always been sharp, always had her guard up, but she loved those dogs like they were her own kids. He hit call. She answered on the second ring. "Ryan Hale," she said, voice sharper than he remembered. "Didn't expect to hear from you unless you were bleeding." "I might be." A pause. "Talk." "I brought home a shepherd. Big, scarred, doesn't respond to anything. But I found a tattoo. K9-47B silence. Elise?" "I'm listening," she said, voice suddenly quieter. "You think it's him?" "I don't know. But if it is, something's wrong. He's here, but he's not here." "I'll be there in the morning." Click. Ryan stared at the phone screen a moment, then stood to throw a log into the fire. And that's when it happened. Headlights flashed across the living room wall. He froze, crunching tires on gravel. Slow. Heavy. He moved to the front door, keeping low, hand brushing the grip of his sidearm holstered beneath the flannel. A black SUV sat at the end of the drive. Engine humming, windows tinted too dark for anything legal in Wyoming. One door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, built like a barroom brawler. Camo jacket under a patched leather vest. Snow crusted on his boots, hands bare, no gloves in 30-degree weather. The man didn't approach fast, just walked like he already owned the place. Ryan cracked the door an inch. "You lost?" The man didn't flinch. "You Ryan Hale?" "Depends. You picked up a dog today." German shepherd. Big one. Scarred Ryan's heart rate spiked. He kept his voice even. "You selling pets now?" "That dog belongs to me," the man said. "Sold without my permission." "I'm here to collect." Ryan stepped out onto the porch, the wood creaking under his boots. "I bought him fair." "Guy said he was a stray." The man smiled, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "Yeah, Kenny. Always had sticky fingers." "Then maybe you should talk to Kenny." "I am." Through you, Ryan didn't blink. "You got paperwork?" "No." "Badge?" "No." "Then you're not taking anything." The man's jaw flexed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," he said. "That animal ain't yours." "He's marked." "I saw the mark," Ryan replied, his voice low. "And he's not property." "Not anymore." The man took a slow step back, eyes hard. "You got 24 hours. Return him, or you'll wish you had." Ryan watched him turn, climb back into the SUV. The vehicle rolled away, tires crunching slowly until the red tail lights disappeared behind a curtain of snow. Inside the cabin, the shepherd hadn't moved, still curled by the hearth. No reaction, no bark, not even a glance toward the door. Ryan exhaled, slow and steady. Something in his gut twisted. This wasn't just a lost dog. This was a ghost, and someone wanted that ghost back, alive or not. Ryan woke before dawn, though it was hard to say if he had ever truly fallen asleep. The cabin was silent, but not in the peaceful way it used to be. It was the kind of silence that felt like a held breath, like something waiting. He rose from the couch, shoulders stiff, and glanced toward the fireplace. The dog was there, same position, eyes open, watching, or maybe just looking. Ryan crouched nearby. "Morning." he said quietly. No tail wag, no head tilt, just the slow blink of something alive, but unmoored. Ryan stood and crossed to the hall closet. He rummaged through old gear until he found it. The faded black K9 utility vest, frayed along the seams. The Velcro patch still clung to one side. Shadow. He turned and walked back to the fireplace. The shepherd had sat up. Not moved, just shifted. But when Ryan knelt and laid the vest down on the floor in front of him, the dog froze. It didn't sniff, didn't back away, didn't lunge, but it froze. Completely. Not out of fear. Something deeper, something that lived in the muscles. Recognition without understanding. Ryan held his breath. Then he spoke, quietly. Shadow, sit. The dog didn't move. Down. No change. Come. Still nothing. Ryan clicked his tongue the way he used to on patrol, gave a short whistle, tapped twice on the floorboards, and then a flicker. The dog's right front paw twitched. Once. Twice. He shifted slightly, as if some old map was being unrolled behind his eyes. Ryan leaned in. You remember this, don't you? He whispered. You just don't know why. The dog stared at him. No growl, no noise. But the stare was heavier now, like it had weight behind it. The kind of look you don't get from strays or rescues, only from something trained, something that used to obey. Ryan stood and turned toward the door. He needed answers, more than gut feelings and scars. He grabbed his keys and called out, Let's go. The shepherd followed, not quickly, not lazily, just followed, like his body remembered a rhythm his mind had forgotten. They drove through the winding mountain road into the edge of Cheyenne, toward the university's animal behavior clinic, a small modern facility tucked between vet sciences and the bioresearch building. Ryan had made the call the night before. Elise Monroe was waiting. She stood outside the rear entrance, arms crossed, lab coat half-buttoned over a dark thermal. Her auburn hair was tied back in a way that looked accidental but wasn't. A clipboard rested against her hip. She didn't smile. She never did. Where is he? She asked. Ryan opened the back door of the truck. The shepherd stepped down. Elise took a half-step forward and froze. God, she whispered. He's huge. Yeah, Ryan said. Bigger than I remember. She crouched, hands on her knees, not reaching out. Does he react? Not to commands, not to name, not even to food until I put it down. She nodded. Bring him in. The exam room smelled like ethanol and old gloves. Stainless steel surfaces reflected cold light. The shepherd didn't flinch when the door clicked shut. He just stood there, eyes moving, quiet, observing. Elise circled him slowly, her tone clinical. Muscle structure is abnormal. He's built like a working dog crossed with a freight train. You sure he wasn't juiced? Ryan shook his head. He didn't look like this 3 years ago. He was lean, fast, not. Enhanced Elise crouched and gently touched the dog's flank. He didn't move. She ran her hands along the shoulders, the neck, the spine. Then she stopped. Fingers paused just beneath the collar line. Here, she said. She dug in gently, then looked at Ryan. You said no chip? Scanned twice. Got nothing. She grabbed her own scanner, a sleeker model, dialed down the frequency. Scanned again along the spine, the shoulders, the chest. Nothing. Then she dropped lower, just behind the right leg. A beep. Elise's eyebrows knit. That's not a standard chip. Ryan moved closer. It's military range, but encrypted. And weird. Not registered to any department I've seen. You can crack it? She turned to the tray of instruments. Eventually. But if you want answers faster, we go deeper. He didn't need to ask what she meant. She grabbed a syringe and prepped a local anesthetic. "Relax," she said, reading the look in his eyes. "It's not invasive. Just a surface extraction." She slid the needle behind the dog's ear. He blinked once, didn't flinch, then slowly lay down on the tile. She worked quietly, made a clean incision near the embedded signal, used tweezers to extract a tiny black shard, like a microchip but jagged, with copper threading and what looked like a data port. "That," she said, dropping it into a lead-lined tray, "is not police issue." Ryan stared at it. "Then what the hell is it?" She looked at him, eyes sharp, voice low. "It's not just a tracker." "It's a lock." "A lock?" She nodded. "Behavioral override. I've only seen one other case. Dog was trained, broken, wiped clean, and repurposed. Used in illegal fight circuits. This is worse." Ryan stepped back. "Someone erased him. Or tried." They both looked at the shepherd. He had sat up again, was watching them, but this time his eyes weren't blank. They were searching. Elise wiped her gloves. "I'll run tests on the chip. Trace the data if I can. But Ryan..." "What?" She walked over, lowered her voice. "If they went through the trouble of wiping a working dog this clean, there's no way they're done. Whoever did this, if they know he's alive, they'll come back." Ryan looked at the dog. "I think they already did." He told her about the man at the cabin. The SUV, the warning. Elise's eyes darkened. "Then we don't have much time." Ryan reached down and scratched behind the shepherd's ear. "You're not just a dog, are you?" The shepherd leaned forward, nose brushing the patch on Ryan's jacket. Ryan didn't breathe. Then the dog sat back down, still silent, still watching. But something had shifted, not enough to say recognition, but more than absence. Elise stood beside him. "You think he remembers?" Ryan kept his eyes on the dog. "I think his body does." The room fell quiet. The hum of the fluorescent lights above, the sound of a life coming back in fragments. And outside, in the parking lot, a black SUV rolled slowly past the back gate. No headlights, no license plates, just a shadow in motion. The chip sat in a steel tray under sterile light, barely the size of a fingernail, but it felt heavier than anything else in the room. Elise stared at it in silence. Ryan leaned over her shoulder, eyes narrowed, jaw locked. "It's not just a tracker," she said finally, her voice lower now, like speaking it too loud might activate something. "This is designed for more than location." Ryan didn't move. "Like what?" Elise reached for her laptop, plugged in a diagnostics probe, and tapped the end of it against the tiny copper threads coiled inside the chip. Data began to stream across the screen, erratic code, encrypted blocks, a frequency pattern pulsing in low waves. "Military-grade encryption," she muttered, "but it's not standard DoD, and it's not from any known police department either. Which means someone built this in the dark." She glanced at him. "Private sector, maybe, or black budget lab. Either way, not legal." Ryan folded his arms, gaze fixed on the dog lying on the exam mat nearby. Shadow hadn't moved since the procedure. He was awake, but still, watching the room with that same unnerving calm. No flinch, no panting. Just quiet processing. Elise returned to the screen. "This pattern, look here." She pointed at the waveform pulsing across the monitor. "It's not just a signal. It's layered." Ryan leaned in. "Explain." "There are two signals running simultaneously. One for tracking. The other looks like a behavior modifier." "Like a shock collar?" "No," she said quickly. "Worse. This isn't external reinforcement. This is neural. It's coded to override instinct. Control response. Possibly even wipe memory associations." Ryan blinked. "You're saying this chip rewrites how he thinks?" Elise nodded slowly. More like blocks what he used to know. Like selective amnesia. Ryan stepped back, hands on his hips. Jesus. The air in the room thickened. Shadow shifted, just a small adjustment of his pause, enough to make both of them turn. Elise lowered her voice again. I've seen something like this once before. A case that never made it to publication. A Malinois recovered after a raid on a suspected bioenhancement facility. Same symptoms, no memory, overbuilt musculature, muted response to human interaction. What happened to the dog? Ryan asked. She didn't answer immediately. It died 3 weeks later. Organ failure. Too many chemical alterations. Ryan looked back at Shadow. He's still alive. Still stable, for now, Elise said. But this chip. It wasn't just tracking him. It was suppressing something. Like what? She turned back to the tray, lifted the chip with tweezers and held it in the light. Fight training. Kill commands. Or just obedience reprogramming. Whatever it was, it didn't finish the job. Ryan exhaled slowly. Because he ran? Or because something went wrong? Shadow sat up, his head tilted slightly to the left, eyes tracking Elise's hand, then shifting to Ryan. Ryan crouched beside him, held up a gloved hand. Shadow, stay. The dog didn't move. But the eyes. They blinked slower this time, and something in them clicked. A pause. Then Shadow did something he hadn't done since the day Ryan brought him home. He shifted his weight and sat. Not a reflex. A choice. Ryan's heart stopped for a second. Elise caught it too. You saw that, right? Ryan nodded. He heard me. Not just sound, meaning Elise backed toward her computer. If the chip was malfunctioning, it might have left holes. Glitches in the block, which we can work with, Ryan said. Elise hesitated. Maybe. But it means something else, too. What? If the chip stopped transmitting, whoever put it in him might know. Ryan stood up. How fast? Depends on the network they used. If it pinged a private server, maybe hours. If it ran live through cellular towers, they might already know. Outside, a car engine revved in the distance. Just a muffled growl, but enough to make Shadow's ears flick toward the window. He didn't bark, but he stood. Elise moved toward the curtain, pulled it back an inch. The street was quiet, but the kind of quiet that preceded something else. You think they're watching? She asked. Ryan already had his phone out. Doesn't matter. We don't stay here. Elise nodded. I've got a remote site. Old field clinic outside of Red Bluff, used for rescue dogs before the funding dried up. Off-grid. No cameras, no questions. How long to get there? Hour, maybe less. Ryan looked down at Shadow. You up for a ride, partner? The dog didn't wag his tail, but he moved toward the door. That was enough. They gathered what they could. The chip, the data, the scan logs. Elise grabbed a cold case with sample vials and a portable spectrometer. Ryan loaded Shadow into the back of his truck, keeping the tailgate slightly cracked for air. As he started the engine, Elise buckled in beside him. You think they'll come after him? She asked. Ryan kept his eyes on the road. If someone spent that kind of money to erase a dog's mind, they didn't do it to lose him. The snow picked up again. Wind blew low across the empty 2-lane road that stretched towards the foothills. As the truck disappeared over the ridge, a black sedan pulled out from a side alley near the clinic. No headlights, no tags, just shadows following something they used to own. But not anymore. It started with the crunch of tires on gravel. Ryan had just finished securing the perimeter camera feed Elise helped set up around the cabin. They'd spent the last 12 hours running scans on Shadow's physiology and decoding fragments from the extracted chip. No answers yet, but too many questions to ignore. He looked out the window. Black SUV, same make as the one from the night Shadow came home. But this time, it wasn't just passing. It stopped, and it brought company. 3 men stepped out. The one in front walked like gravity bent around him. Thick shoulders, head shaved clean, leather jacket stretched across a frame too wide to belong to a gym rat. He didn't rush, didn't speak. He just adjusted the sleeves of his tactical vest and started toward the porch like he already knew the house layout. Ryan opened the front door before the knock came. "Elise," he said without turning his head. "Stay back." He stepped out, letting the screen door swing half shut behind him. The man reached the base of the steps. The other 2 flanked him, one wiry with neck tattoos that ran up to his ears, the other quiet and pale, eyes constantly scanning like he was born paranoid. The lead man smiled. "You're Ryan Hale." Ryan didn't answer. The man nodded, as if that was enough. "Name's Marcus Vale. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Ryan's stance shifted, just enough to telegraph readiness. "I bought a dog." Marcus tilted his head. "You bought a piece of government-trained hardware that went off the grid. That wasn't a dog, officer. That was property. Conditioned, enhanced, repurposed." Ryan's expression didn't change. "He's not your property." Marcus's eyes cooled. "I built him. I fixed what the badge boys couldn't finish. He was dead weight when we picked him up. Just bones and breath. You think he made it out of that warehouse by accident?" Ryan's stomach turned. "You were there." Marcus smiled again. "We clean up. We salvage. You stole him." "I rescued him," Marcus said flatly. "Gave him purpose? You think that chip was just for fun? You have any idea what he's capable of when properly triggered?" Ryan took 1 step down. "You messed with a partner." "Not a machine. He's not a partner anymore." "He's a weapon," Marcus said. "One I spent too much time and money building to let you screw it up. You tortured him. We trained him. You erased him." Marcus's voice dropped an octave. He was better for it. From inside, Shadow growled. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, clean, like a blade drawn halfway. Marcus turned slightly. "Well, well." "He does still bark. He's remembering," Ryan said. "And every day that passes, he's becoming more him and less yours." "Then I'm out of time." Marcus lifted his chin. The 2 men behind him stepped forward. Not drawing, but close. One cracked his knuckles. The other flexed his hands like he was rolling tension down his forearms. Ryan's voice went still. "You want him?" "I do." "Then bring a warrant." Marcus chuckled. "We're not the kind of people that bother with paperwork." "Then you're trespassing," Ryan said. "That's so." Ryan nodded. "And I'm still law in this county." Marcus paused, then slowly pulled a phone from his jacket. With a few taps, he turned the screen toward Ryan. A live feed appeared, grainy, black and white. Security camera, the front gate of Elise's old field clinic. The angle shifted to the side door, then to the hallway near the lab. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You tapped our system." Marcus slipped the phone back into his coat. "Insurance. I don't like being blindsided. You've been watching us?" Marcus shrugged. "Off and on. Long enough to know the chip came out. That means you've seen things. Things that should have stayed buried." Ryan stepped down off the porch. "That why you're here? To bury us too?" Marcus didn't blink. "I'm here for the asset." Nothing else. Shadow pushed the screen door open with his snout. Walked out slow. Steady. Not growling now. Just present. His eyes locked onto Marcus. The man stiffened, just a flicker. "You remember me, don't you?" Marcus said. Shadow didn't move. Didn't growl. Didn't blink. Just stared. Marcus took 1 step forward. Shadow stepped in front of Ryan, blocking him, body still, tail straight, ears forward. Guarding. See? Ryan said quietly. Not your dog anymore. Marcus's face tightened. That loyalty won't save him. Maybe not, Ryan replied. But it'll bury you. Marcus exhaled. You've made a mistake. You came to my house. You threatened me. You tapped our clinic's feed. That's 3 felonies, and I've got backup arriving in 10. He was bluffing. There was no backup. Didn't matter. Marcus stared a beat longer, then turned. We'll see who wins this. He walked back to the SUV. The others followed. But before climbing in, Marcus looked back. You're not just playing with a dog, Hale. You're lighting a fuse. When it blows, it won't be clean. Then he was gone. The SUV reversed down the driveway, tires spitting loose rock and snow. Ryan stood still. Shadow didn't move from his side. Not until the vehicle disappeared behind the trees. Only then did he sit. Not out of command. Out of choice. Ryan looked down. You're not a weapon, he said. Shadow looked up, and for the first time since this whole thing started, Ryan swore he saw it. The flicker of recognition, of someone coming home from the dark. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Ryan knew. This wasn't about a lost dog anymore. It was about stopping whatever made him that way. The clearing behind Ryan's cabin looked different now. The snow had melted into muddy patches, revealing the forgotten outlines of an old agility course-worn cones, a half-collapsed hurdle, and a line of tires buried halfway in frost-bitten ground. Ryan stood in the middle of it all, arms folded, eyes on Shadow. The shepherd sat 10 feet away, alert but not engaged. Not yet. Beside Ryan, Elise held a small silver case. Inside, a series of sealed vials, scent triggers, and an old handheld speaker. I pulled these from the K9 archive, she said, flipping the lid open. Synthetic versions of the original stimuli. Gunpowder, cordite, blood, human sweat, even a low-grade meth compound. Just enough to trigger scent memory. And the audio? Standard field cues, she said. Whistle calls, sirens, command barks, and your voice recorded back when you two were still clearing rooms together. Ryan didn't smile. Not yet. She handed him a clicker and stepped back. You ready for this? He asked quietly, looking at Shadow. The dog didn't move, but he didn't look away either. Ryan knelt and placed one scent pad at the base of a cone. He didn't say anything, just stepped back and watched. Shadow sniffed the air once, twice, then stood. He approached the cone slowly, head low, muscles tight, like something in his wiring was both recognizing and resisting. He stopped over the pad and sat. Ryan's fingers tightened around the clicker. He gave one click and tossed a small treat. Shadow caught it mid-air with reflexes so fast, even Elise flinched. That wasn't chance, she said. No, Ryan agreed. That was training. They moved through a series of scent tests, changing order, intensity, and pairing each with a verbal cue. Down. Shadow hesitated, then lowered his body halfway before pulling back. Come. A twitch, then stillness. Elise, Ryan said, glancing sideways. Try the audio. She tapped the speaker. It crackled, then played a short burst of tactical siren, a fast, 2-pitch signal used in active unit deployment. Shadow's head whipped towards the sound. Ryan stepped forward. Shadow, sit, the dog sat. Faster this time. Ryan crouched beside him. His voice dropped. Protect. A pause. Shadow stood, circled once, then planted himself between Ryan and Elise. Body tight, head high. Ryan blinked. That's protective posture, Elise said. Full response. After just one round. She exhaled. There's more left in him than we thought. They ran the drill again, this time pairing sound with physical movement. Ryan tossed a dummy baton toward a nearby fence post. It hit with a loud thud. Shadow's eyes tracked the arc before snapping back to Ryan. He didn't run, but his shoulders were tensed, ready. Something still blocking full engagement, Elise said, watching closely. It's like he remembers what to do, but not why. That's the chip, Ryan said. Residual suppression, maybe even trauma lock. Elise nodded slowly. What if we try the emergency trigger word? You mean your unit's emergency override? You ever used it on him? Ryan thought back. Only once during a canyon raid where Shadow had to be called off mid-bite because a civilian walked into the line of fire. He hadn't heard the word since. He looked at Shadow, then spoke, clear and calm. Stand down. The effect was instant. Shadow froze, eyes locked, his front paws shifted. Then he backed up 2 steps, then sat, composed, not neutral, obedient. Ryan crouched again. You know that one, he said. Shadow's ears twitched. Ryan reached into the case and pulled out the old black collar, the original one from their deployment days. The tag was still there, the leather cracked but familiar. He held it out. Shadow stepped forward, sniffed once, paused, then nudged it with his nose. It wasn't memory. Not yet. But it was something deeper. Muscle memory, sense memory, soul memory. Ryan didn't move, and neither did the dog. Elise's voice broke the stillness. You saw it, right? I saw it. We can rebuild the rest. Ryan finally looked up. No, he said. Elise blinked. No. We're not rebuilding. Ryan said. We're waking him up. They ran another round of scent and command sequences until the sun dipped low and cast long shadows over the clearing. Ryan's voice began to rasp from hours of repetition, but he didn't stop. Neither did Shadow. Each reaction grew sharper, each pause shorter. The block hadn't broken yet, but it was cracking. Elise packed up the kit and watched from the porch, arms crossed. We're close, she said. Ryan didn't reply. He just knelt beside the dog. Shadow's head turned toward him, eyes catching the last amber light of the day. Protect, Ryan whispered. Shadow stepped forward, planted himself between Ryan and the tree line, and for a split second, just before the wind changed direction, his tail moved. Not wagged, not fully. Just a shift. Like something inside him was turning toward the sun again. Like he was beginning to remember who he was. The wind howled like a wounded animal across the ridgeline, pushing thick sheets of snow against the cabin walls. Trees groaned, branches cracked. It was the kind of cold that silenced everything but instinct. Inside, the fire was dying down to red embers. The only light came from a single lamp in the corner and the glow of Elise's laptop. She was seated cross-legged on the floor, running diagnostics on the behavioral logs from Shadow's latest training session. Ryan sat at the kitchen table, cleaning his sidearm with slow, methodical movements. Shadow lay near the front door, body relaxed, but eyes tracking every shadow the wind stirred outside. Something about the silence felt wrong. Ryan noticed it first. Not the wind, not the creak of timber, the absence of sound. The power flickered. Twice, then died. The room dimmed into a thick hush. Elise looked up. Breaker? No, Ryan said quietly. They cut the line. He stood, sliding the sidearm into his holster. Then he moved to the back hallway, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a duffel bag. From it, he retrieved a flashlight, a spare magazine, and a short-barrel pump-action shotgun. Elise set her laptop aside and walked to the window. She pulled back the curtain. 2 faint headlights crept down the driveway. No tire crunch, just glide. Snow packed that thick didn't give up sound easily. Ryan joined her. SUV, he said. Same model? Same plate. How many? Can't tell yet. He moved toward the fireplace, crouched beside Shadow. The shepherd stood without being told. Ryan looked him in the eye. "Stay close to her." Shadow didn't blink. Outside, car doors opened. Multiple. Ryan reached over and turned off the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Elise moved beside Shadow near the corner of the living room. She clutched her phone, fingers already working a silent ping to the local ranger outpost miles away. Ryan stood at the front entrance, breath steady. Then the first thud. A heavy boot against the side door. Shadow growled, low, deep. No bark, just the sound of something ancient and ready. Another thud, stronger. Glass shattered at the kitchen window. A metal object tumbled inside. Ryan recognized it too late. Flashbang. It exploded with a bone-rattling pop and searing white light. Shadow didn't flinch. He was already moving. Elise blinked against the aftershock, eyes stinging. Ryan recovered faster, raising the shotgun and stepping into the kitchen. A man climbed through the broken window, masked, holding a crowbar. Ryan fired. The shot went wide, catching the frame beside him, but it was enough to make the man duck. He scrambled back out. A loud crack came from the front door. They were forcing it. Ryan turned. The lock gave way, the door burst open, and a figure rushed inside. Shadow launched. It wasn't a sprint. It wasn't rage. It was purpose. The shepherd hit the intruder mid-chest, sending the man sprawling backward across the hardwood. He tried to raise his weapon, but Shadow's jaws closed around his forearm with a crunch. The man screamed, rolling violently, but Shadow held his grip tight, calculated, breaking without shredding. Another man entered behind him, swinging a bat. Ryan was there before the blow landed. He tackled the second man sideways into the wall, jamming the shotgun barrel under his chin. "Don't move." The man froze. Outside, an engine revved. Another figure remained in the SUV, watching. Marcus. He didn't come in. He didn't need to. Ryan kicked the bat away, then zip-tied the second man with cord from the duffel. Shadow still had the first pinned, growling inches from the bleeding arm. Elise stepped forward cautiously. "Shadow," she said. "Release." He didn't move. She knelt. "Shadow," she repeated, calmer. "It's done." His ears twitched. The growl faded. And then, with one clean motion, he let go and stepped back. The man sobbed, cradling his arm, curling into himself. Ryan yanked the door open. Cold slammed into the room. He stepped outside, shotgun low but ready. The SUV lights flashed once, then backed up. No screech, just deliberate retreat. Marcus didn't even look back. Ryan stood in the doorway until the taillights disappeared into the falling snow. Then he turned. Shadow was standing in the middle of the room, not panting, not blinking, just steady. Present. Elise whispered. "That wasn't memory." Ryan nodded. "That was instinct." His instinct. He moved closer, crouched beside the shepherd. "You came back tonight." Shadow didn't wag his tail, but he leaned in, pressed his head lightly into Ryan's chest, and stayed there for a long time. Outside, the storm buried the tire tracks. Inside, something had finally been uncovered. Shadow wasn't just recovering. He was remembering who he used to be. And tonight, he chose to protect. The snow had begun to melt, but the cold still gripped the mountains like a clenched fist. Ryan stood outside the sheriff's department in Buffalo, Wyoming, a plain town pressed against the borderlands. He studied the worn satellite printout one more time. A warehouse. Remote. No power. No road in during winter. But there it was, pinged from the chip hidden beneath Shadow's scar tissue. Marcus had implanted it months ago. Maybe years. And whatever signal it was giving off, it wasn't designed to be traced by standard trackers. It required a specific frequency, a military-coded sweep that Elise had cracked open just hours after the attack. What they found changed everything. The chip wasn't just a locator, it was a key. It pinged every location Shadow had ever been taken since his disappearance. One stood out. The warehouse. 3 law enforcement units from surrounding counties converged that night. Unmarked SUVs, 1 canine unit, no sirens, no radios, just quiet movement through pine-lined roads under a low sky. Ryan rode shotgun in the lead vehicle. Shadow sat in the rear, alert, still, muzzle twitching at the scent of something far more familiar than any of them could guess. As they neared the abandoned logging trail, the convoy halted. Captain Mora from Sheridan County stepped out. She looked over the map, then at Ryan. "You sure this is it?" Ryan didn't answer with words. He opened the rear hatch. Shadow leapt out, nose to ground. One deep inhale, then he took off, not wild, not erratic, just focused. Mora nodded. "That's a yes." They followed on foot, weapons drawn but lowered. 20 minutes in, they saw it. A steel roof warehouse, sunken into a bend in the land, partially obscured by snowdrifts and collapsed timber. It looked empty. But Shadow's posture changed. He stiffened, head up, one paw raised. Then he growled a short, clipped note. Ryan raised his hand. "Hold." From somewhere inside, a faint, high-pitched yelp. Then another. Elise, walking just behind them with a tablet tuned to the chip's readout, spoke quietly. Multiple signals. 15 at least. All canine. Ryan's heart clenched. 15 dogs. Some could be dead, some barely alive. Shadow surged forward. Ryan gave a short whistle. "Go!" The shepherd bolted toward the warehouse door and stopped just short, nose pressed against the edge of the rusted panel. He turned his head once. Waiting. Ryan ran to catch up, nodded to Mora. "Breach." A team moved to the side, prepared explosives, quiet charges. 3, 2, 1. The door blew inward with a dull thump. What hit them first wasn't a weapon. It was the smell. Rotting food, wet fur, metal, blood. Then the sound howls. Fearful, desperate. Some defiant. They moved fast. Inside, cages lined the far wall. Tall, reinforced, padlocked. Some dogs barked wildly. Others cowered in silence. Most wore ragged collars, some bearing faded department tags from other states, Minnesota, Oregon, Texas. Shadow didn't hesitate. He ran straight past the cages, down a hallway none of them had noticed. Ryan followed, boots echoing. Down the corridor, a figure turned a corner and bolted. "Marcus!" Ryan shouted and gave chase. They ran through a maze of rooms, one filled with monitors, another stacked with expired vet supplies. Marcus hurled a file cabinet into Ryan's path. It barely slowed him. Then a low growl stopped everything. Shadow lunged from a side room and intercepted Marcus, knocking him to the floor. But he didn't bite. He pinned him one paw on the chest, eyes locked. Marcus struggled, then stopped. The same fear Ryan had seen in the man's eyes during deployment years ago was back. "You shouldn't have touched him," Ryan said coldly. By the time Mora and the others arrived, Marcus was in cuffs, bleeding slightly from a twisted wrist and a bruised ego. Shadow stood over him, silent. In the next hour, they cut open every cage. One by one, dogs limped out. German shepherds, Belgian Malinois, even a battered Labrador with missing patches of fur. Some recognized their handlers who had come in response to the call. Tears flowed freely. Some wagged tails for the first time in months. But not all were lucky. 3 had died in their cages. Quiet. Alone. One handler dropped to his knees, clutching a collar he recognized. Ryan turned away, jaw clenched. Elise stood beside him, her voice barely a whisper. They were being moved. Sold to private security firms overseas. Some already gone. Ryan looked at Shadow. His ears twitched, but his posture stayed calm. Not triumphant. Just resolved. Mora approached. "We'll need your full report." "And Shadow?" He's not just a survivor, he's the one who cracked this case. Ryan nodded. He didn't just remember. He led us. She glanced around the wreckage. You ever think of reinstating? Ryan gave a tired smile. I never really left. As they walked out, the rescued dogs trailing in quiet formation, one handler turned to Ryan. Your shepherd. He didn't hesitate. How did you train that? Ryan didn't answer, but Shadow turned, and for the first time in a long while, he barked. Short, sharp, proud, not for glory, for the others. The city auditorium had never been this full, not even during election season. Rows of uniformed officers lined the aisles, their polished boots and pressed blues giving the room a solemn dignity. Families sat behind them, young kids in miniature sheriff caps, spouses holding flowers, a few grey-haired veterans clapping quietly as names were read. But today wasn't about a person, it was about a dog. Shadow sat at the edge of the stage, tail curled neatly around his paws, dark eyes scanning the crowd with the silent discipline of someone who knew exactly what was going on and why it mattered. Ryan adjusted his tie, uncomfortable in a suit that didn't suit him. Elise stood nearby, flipping through the cue cards she wasn't planning to use. The mayor had offered to lead the ceremony, but the department insisted on something more honest. So Ryan and Elise would speak not as politicians or officials, but as witnesses to what Shadow had done. Captain Mora stepped to the mic first. There are many ways to define heroism. She began, voice firm but warm. Sometimes it's what you do in the moment. Sometimes it's surviving when you shouldn't have, and sometimes it's what you choose to do afterward. She paused, then nodded toward Shadow. Today we honor a warrior who did all three. The room erupted into applause. Ryan stepped up, hand resting on Shadow's shoulder for a beat longer than needed. When I lost him years ago, he said, I thought I'd lost a partner. What I didn't realize was that he was still on the job surviving, protecting others, and waiting for a way back. He glanced down. Shadow met his eyes. He didn't break. He adapted. There was a long silence after he stepped back, the kind that carried weight. Not a single camera flash, just breathing, just respect. One by one, other officers came forward. Some to tell stories of the dogs they'd lost, some to offer thanks. One young cop from Texas wept as he hugged a Malinois rescued during the warehouse raid, now fully recovered, and pressing its head against his chest like it had never left. That moment lit something in Elise. After the ceremony, back in the department lounge, she pulled Ryan aside. We have to do more, she said. He knew what she meant. A one-time rescue isn't enough. Exactly. There are more out there. Dogs like Shadow. Dogs nobody is looking for. The next day they registered the paperwork. The K9 Valor Fund. Its mission, to support retired or injured police dogs across the country. Medical care, housing, reuniting lost dogs with handlers, and perhaps most importantly, raising public awareness about the lives of these quiet warriors. By week's end, the fund already had its first major donor and anonymous gift of $50,000, accompanied by a note, because mine never made it back. But the biggest twist came from a different corner. 3 of the rescued dogs, once presumed too aggressive for rehabilitation, had begun responding to gentle retraining. One had already bonded with a young girl in a wheelchair. Another had taken to scent tracking again on his own, without command. They weren't broken. They were waiting for someone to believe in them. Like Shadow. One afternoon, as the fall light poured across the department's rooftop training yard, Ryan tossed a simple phrase into the air. Find it, boy. Shadow didn't hesitate. He darted forward, nose to ground, tail high, focused. Elise stood beside him, a clipboard in one hand and a letter in the other. Army's requesting him back. she said softly. Ryan raised an eyebrow. They want him to train new handlers. Teach them what only he knows. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ryan grinned. Let's ask him. He whistled once. Shadow stopped mid-search, turned and jogged back. Ryan knelt, patting his side. What do you think, partner? You ready to teach the rookies? Shadow tilted his head, then barked. Not out of instinct, but something that sounded very much like agreement. And as the wind shifted and caught the fluttering banner above the yard, the new one, freshly hung with bold black letters, Shadow sat beneath it like he'd always known it would be there. K9 Valor Fund, for those who served without words. The sun was dying slowly behind the Wyoming hills, casting long orange streaks across the backyard. It was the kind of light that made you feel both grateful and just a little hollow. Ryan sat on the porch steps, a battered leather-bound journal balanced on his knee. The pages smelled like pine and thyme. His pen moved slowly, not out of hesitation, but reverence. Shadow lay beside him, head resting across Ryan's boots, body rising and falling in steady rhythm. His ears twitched every so often at the chirp of a bird or rustle of wind. But otherwise, he was still, calm, home. Ryan glanced down. You always know when it's time to be quiet, he murmured. Shadow didn't respond, except for the faintest nudge of his nose against Ryan's ankle. That was his way of saying he was listening, always had been. The page was half filled with thoughts Ryan had never spoken aloud. Not to Elise, not to the department, not even to the other handlers who nodded with understanding, but couldn't possibly know what it felt like to lose a partner, and get him back years later. He looked at the last line he'd written. He didn't bark for glory. He barked for home. It had come to him during training earlier that day, when Shadow had ignored the decoy suspect, ignored the praise, ignored everything, and bolted instead toward the door Elise had just walked through, tail wagging like mad, tongue out, pure joy. That was Shadow. Not chasing medals or titles, just chasing the people he loved. Ryan closed the journal softly, the leather creaking with finality. A quiet knock on the porch rail made him look up. It was Maya, the young girl from town who had been visiting the K9 Center ever since she bonded with Scout, one of the rescued dogs. She clutched a drawing in her hand. I made this for him, she said. She handed over a crayon sketch Shadow standing tall, his silhouette bold, his eyes colored gold, like the setting sun. He looks like a superhero, she said. Ryan smiled. He is. Maya crouched down and hugged Shadow gently. The old dog licked her hand once, then looked up at Ryan as if to say, she's all right. Elise appeared at the doorway with 2 mugs of tea. You writing again? She asked, handing him one. Trying, he said. Just don't know how to end it. She leaned against the post, looking down at Shadow. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe this is one of those stories that keeps going, just in different ways. He nodded, sipping the tea. It tasted like sage and something else. Something warm. Later that evening, as stars began to dot the sky and Shadow finally dozed off for real, Ryan returned to the journal and added one last line. We don't choose our heroes. Sometimes they crawl back to us, scarred, half-forgotten, and remind us what loyalty really looks like. He closed the book for good. The wind picked up briefly, fluttering the curtain behind the screen door. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, but it was faint, and Shadow didn't even stir. That night, Ryan uploaded the final chapter of their story to the K9 Valor Fund website. He added one short caption beneath the image of Shadow in uniform, ears alert, eyes calm. He didn't bark for glory. He barked for home. And beneath that, a single question for everyone reading. What's your story with a loyal pet? If you've ever known a dog who stood by you when no one else did, if you've ever whispered secrets into fur and known they were safe forever, if you believe some heroes walk on 4 legs, support the mission, honor their service, subscribe to the German Shepherd channel, and share this story with someone who needs to believe in loyalty again. Shadow's not just a survivor, he's a reminder. That loyalty doesn't ask for recognition. It just waits at the door until you come home.